All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining our Education Third House with Senator Greg Walker and Representative Ryan Lauer. We would like to start by thanking our area legislators for agreeing to join us for this Third House event today. This Third House is being co-hosted and moderated by Columbus Educators Association and Bartholomew County School Corporation. My name is Alan Birkemeier. I live in Brown County, and I am an association representative for CEA at Central Middle School.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Boezeman, Director of Operations for BCSC. We're excited to be here with our legislators. First of all, we will give both legislators 1 minute to introduce themselves and speak a little bit about their perspective on the current legislative session so far. After that, Alan and I will ask several questions about specific bills and issues in the legislature this year. Questions were submitted in advance by members of the public. Please note, due to the number of questions submitted, we have combined several, edited the wording of a few for clarity, and we've done our best to focus on asking questions from as many perspectives as possible.
In order to make sure we get through all questions, we're asking the legislators to keep their responses to around 2.5 minutes. If more than 3 minutes go by, you'll hear this sound. Maybe. Well, it's like a bell. We heard it earlier before we started. Anyway, letting you know it's time to move on. Before we do introductions, we want to thank both legislators for their work on supporting and voting for the bus stop arm bill. Locally, this means a lot to us, a lot to all of us, to ensure that students are safe while waiting for the bus. Thank you, lawmakers. Next, we have introductions. We're going to begin with Representative Lauer.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you everyone who's joining this morning, and thank you to our teachers and educators in Bartholomew County and throughout the state. It's my pleasure and honor to represent Columbus and Bartholomew County up at the State House, and matters of education are deeply important to me, as I know they are to you as well. So I look forward to our conversation today. I look forward to listening to your members and to the members of the public, and look forward to going through how the session's been going. It's been a very jam-packed, a very condensed and fast session. A lot of bills have been moving, and it's exciting to be here today to talk about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lauer. Next, we'll hear from Senator Walker. Senator Walker, your introduction, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Alan. I was just saying it's not an early morning. I get up earlier than this by good measure, and just wanted to get on with the day, but I'm glad you're all able to join us. Ronnie Embry called me. She works the halls for the organization, teachers organization in the State House. She called me about 9:30 last night, and she hung up. And so I called her back, and she said, "Oh, I realized it was real late, so I didn't want to bother you." I said, "No, I'm still up." But I think she was about as excited as you could be about this opportunity, and she wanted to thank me for joining you. To which I could say, it really is important that we be accessible and we hear out folks' concerns on matters. And I moved my microphone. I probably shouldn't do that, but I'm looking forward to the conversation. It has been a fun session, as they all are, and we'll just get right to the questions as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, legislators. We are going to ask some specific question about specific bills in the State House. Representative Lauer, we're going to start with a question for you. You voted for HB 1134, which we would know would place restrictions on what can be said or explored in classrooms. Educators that have read the bill have reached out very confused about what topics they are and are not allowed to talk about or even condemn. For instance, we had teachers asking if they could say that fascism is wrong, that Cambodian, Armenian, Rwandan, and Romani genocides were morally reprehensible, if the Dred Scott case was argued poorly, or even if they're allowed to say that the people who opposed MLK's pro-integration message were wrong. We understand that this bill has been amended in committee, but much of what is or is not allowed to be said is still vague. How can we ensure that this or any future legislation is clear enough that it can be reasonably implemented with objectivity by the government agencies to which they apply?
Thank you for the question. 1134 obviously has been a subject of robust debate and discussion The intent of the bill is to do a couple of things, and one is to empower parents to be more involved with our schools' curriculums and in an advisory capacity. The mention of each of those historical events and circumstances, absolutely, those can be taught and they should be taught. The bill even goes further and says you can take a position on them as if it's not in conflict with our Constitution. So each of the circumstances that you reference absolutely can be taught and should be taught. There's nothing in the bill that would discourage teachers from doing that. I know that there's been a lot of talk about this bill and what can and can't be done. The focus of the section to what would not be allowed to be taught in the classroom are teaching concepts and ideologies that I think are against our Constitution, and that's pitting one ethnicity against another, pitting one sex against another, and taking a wrong and immoral position that because of your race, because of your immutable characteristics that are God-given, that you were born with, that somehow reflects on your character and who you are. So I'm against separating kids, for instance, based on their immutable characteristics. That's just wrong. I'm very encouraged to know that I don't see that as a problem in our community, but testimony during the House proceedings had some shocking examples in other parts of our state where schools are bringing in these divisive concepts, and that's what that section focuses on. Absolutely, it is actually explicit that you can and should teach our history and all the ills and historic injustices as well, and take a position on it in addition. So I hope this discussion and discussions we've had can keep that discussion going, and I think that's very important. Currently, the bill has gone through many changes in committee, changes on second reading. Now it's over in the Senate, and it's my understanding that there's quite a bit of changes going on in the Senate committee. They're going to be hearing that again for additional changes probably next week. And I look forward to understanding and working with Senator Walker and other senators and counterparts of ours over there to get this bill in a good place that can be positive for our parents, positive for our kids, and for our schools and teachers. Absolutely, I want to make sure that we do increase transparency for our parents and for our communities and our schools. That's a central focus of the bill, and to empower our students and our teachers and our parents to get more involved in schools. And I think that's an important and positive thing.
Thank you. The alarm did play. I don't know. We're having some problems with it. So
I can be long-winded. So
yeah, if you guys see me like waving around, that's the alarm going off. So sorry. Anyway, thank you, Representative Lauer. Senator Walker, you've stated publicly that you oppose HB 1134. Now that it has been heavily amended by committee, what is your current perspective on this legislation? Do we still need a law prohibiting certain conversations or concepts in the classroom?
Well, no, this is interesting because I've looked at the amendment language, and it talks about the schools or individuals cannot promote one group to be treated preferentially or adversely. I hope we're not promoting adverse treatment for anybody, but preferential treatment. So if I had a speaker that came into the classroom and said, I want to talk about the bill that's in front of the U.S. Senate right now. And it's a bill dealing with reparations for the descendants of those who were enslaved in the United States in the 1800s, 1700s. If I have that speaker to come in and talk about the history of slavery and why there is a reparations bill being in front of the United States Senate, am I promoting that concept right now? Or I have a discussion about, I don't think as many schools have gone down this path as maybe did even in recent decades, but you might have preferential college admissions for students of color or disadvantaged in some manner, income or whatever it is. Can you have a promotion of that by having that conversation? And I still think it is vague. I do believe there are concepts that we can all agree are divisive, but I don't understand why we can't come to that resolution at the local level. Anything else in the bill that talks about having parental control, what measures of student privacy, I think we can have those conversations. But the part that still gives me the most heartburn would just be, why do I need another school board in Indianapolis to replace the one that's in all the districts in the state of Indiana? So I'm still not comfortable with, I guess you'd say, the either this is the intent of the bill or the unintended consequences. I was speaking earlier, we can talk about the language of the bill. Those phrases themselves don't give me as much alarm as how far could that be carried, or how does one categorize what becomes divisive or not. And if we want to have those conversations, I'd rather have some context around them. And I'd rather we did that between a parent and a teacher. And if that can't come to resolution, a parent and a teacher and a principal, and so on, moving through the administration until you get resolution as to what's being taught, or if there are matters that the child doesn't want to participate in, or the parent doesn't want them participating in, finding pathways that can be accommodated with the least disruption and the most beneficial approach that, it's still a local decision as far as I'm concerned. So I just can't see why we need mechanisms for things that I just assumed have been in place for decades and decades. And if those are insufficient mechanisms, I don't want to be a school board member. I'd run for school board if I wanted to be on a school board. I'll leave it at that.
I heard the alarm that time.
Thank you, legislators. Another provision of House Bill 1134 is the Curriculum Materials Advisory Committee, abbreviated CMAC. And BCSC curriculum materials are chosen after being reviewed by a committee of primarily current educators who have been professionally trained in curriculum development and implementation. Ultimately, the materials are voted upon by the school board before being officially adopted, giving education professionals, parents, and community members ample opportunity to weigh in before the final selection is made. Initially, House Bill 1134 would have mandated the creation of CMACs, though after it has been amended, this is no longer a requirement. Senator Walker, how can schools balance parental input with the insight of professional educators that have studied how to write and implement curriculum?
That's a great question, because I don't know how you balance it. What I do know is that if you've got professionals that are already engaged in that practice, they're not acting in a vacuum. They obviously, as you mentioned, have opportunity for input from parents. But when it comes to final approval from the school board, what I see here that has been part of Indiana practice for decades, again, is that we have elected officials who would ultimately be held accountable if there was to be a curriculum practice that was in conflict with community standards. And so I have seen it in my lifetime. I have seen it in my lifetime as a legislator, where every member of a school board was dismissed by the vote, by the power of the vote, all of them. And so someone was unhappy, and they expressed that unhappiness. And you can just imagine what the next school board did in regards to the concerns that caused a total turnover of every member of a school board. And as long as we have that mechanism in place, I think that satisfies the concerns we have with curriculum standards and providing parental control over how those are to be administered in a local school system.
Thank you for the response. Representative Lauer, when you voted for the bill, CMACs were still required. What is wrong with BCSC's current process of selecting curriculum for our classrooms? And additionally, how can we be sure that political ideology does not take precedence over academic rigor in future bills?
Yes, thank you. the practice that we use locally, to my understanding and everything that I'm told, that parents are involved in some capacity, and I think that's very important when it comes to decisions at the school corporation and in our schools, and in the process of bringing together curriculums. That's not the case in all school districts. However, I think it is important to have a structure where parents are actively involved. And mind you, in the House version of the bill, the Curriculum Advisory Board is simply an advisory board. They are appointed by the school board, and at the same time, they they don't have to meet more than twice a year, but they can meet if they need to in additional times. But to have input, have parents involved in the curriculums that our schools offer to our children, I think is very important, and having a structure to do that. The procedures and how that goes about here, I think we have a good partnership, and there are opportunities at the school level and at the corporation level for parents to be involved in that process. I think instituting mind you, these were part of our state structure, our local structure, for 50 years, and they went away in 2011 with some changes. And I think it's important for parents to have a voice and to be able to review the curriculums. But ultimately, it is up to the school board to accept those recommendations or not, or change them. And so even under the language currently of the House bill, the school board is the elected official is the ultimate decider as to where the school ends up. And I think that's important as well. So parental involvement, but also accountability from elected officials.
Thank you again, legislators. A third part of HB 1134 that we wanted to discuss deals with social and emotional learning, or SEL. In its original unamended form, the bill would have allowed schools or teachers to the bill would not have allowed teachers or schools to survey students on any social or emotional topic, specifically stating that we would not be able to ask about habits, beliefs, traits, opinions, or attempt to influence these things. Some in the state claim that social emotional learning is harmful to children and a Trojan horse for communism. However, the State Chamber of Commerce, business leaders, child development professionals, and the State Department of Education have all stated that social emotional learning is extremely beneficial for students and should be part of every child's education. Locally, BCSC partners with organizations such as Healthy Communities, Counseling Counts, and Alliance for Substance Abuse Progress to support children and families in our community. Representative Lauer, how can we continue these beneficial partnerships if we do not have the data on social and emotional well-being of our students and their families available to provide them?
Thank you. I think maybe there's a disconnect here. There certainly is language in the bill that talks about surveys that are sent home to parents or about their children, and there's language in there that allows you to opt out or allows a parent to opt out their child from those, but it doesn't stop schools from being able to do that. I think the concept of social emotional learning it's very important as to how exactly it's being implemented. So that is a rubric, a very broad concept that I know BCSC in particular uses some of that methodology to do that, and I don't see from even the current version of the bill that sort of pedagogy would be disallowed in any way. there are circumstances we've seen from testimony in the state where these divisive concepts come in, and to me that moves away from the larger, broader aspect of what SEL is as a general concept. So it really depends on how it's implemented, and I think there are circumstances where it can move away from what I think is a noble intent.
I'm gonna ask a little clarifying question here. So little two parts here. First of all, have you heard anything locally that you would have concerns about, or you think would have concerns about under this bill? And secondly, if there is, there seems to be a lot of confusion about the wording of this bill. Can you explain to me this particular part, what the wording would mean then? Because most of our questions were asked about this section of the bill seem to be of the opinion that this is vague enough that we would not be able to even survey our students in class about what they thought about general questions. So if you could give me your interpretation of that section of the bill, and also if there's anything locally that you have heard that would fall under the category here.
I can't think of anything offhand that what our official policies are running afoul of that, but the bill has focused on in some of those sections on surveys that are sent home, and interventions for mental health, behavioral health, and I know that there's been changes to that. I'm expecting changes in the Senate as well, and I think it is really important to get clarifying language on these topics, because the intent of the bill is certainly not to discourage schools from teaching children strong social skills and interacting with other members or other school children and their teachers, and having a positive outlook on life, and addressing challenges in life in positive ways. But I think there are circumstances where a parent might not be comfortable with some surveys that get into personal topics or issues that parents might object to, and I think they have the right to opt out of those in those situations. So I think the answer is, I haven't been brought forward those types of situations, but I have had parents be concerned about generally SEL when it does get taken down a different path, and so that's something I listen to parents, but I'm also cognizant of being clear in the language, and working with our educators to get to a place where hopefully we can all be comfortable. And it's part of the process. So the Senate's got the ball on this. We're looking at what their changes will be, and probably on this section there'll be changes, and we'll review that when it comes back over.
Thank you. And just so everyone knows, on that follow-up question, we did reset the 3-minute time. So Senator Walker, if you'd like some extra time later, if we have a follow-up question for you, the same thing's going to happen.
That's fine.
So thank you, Representative Lauer. I got another question here. Senator Walker, you have stated that, oh, that's the wrong one. I must have scrolled on the wrong spot. I lost my spot on the, there it is. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I lost my spot on the script. All right, sorry about this. There you. All right, so thank you, legislators. Let's move on to a different bill. Under current Indiana law, if a school or library is accused of disseminating materials harmful to minors, there exists a legal defense if the material could be used for an educational purpose. SB 17 would remove that legal defense and even goes so far as to allow the jailing of librarians over the contents of books in their library. Senator Walker, do you remain in favor of this bill? Why or why not?
Well, I think there are two parts of the bill, and I made the mistake of trusting some colleagues on all the content. I mean, I think there is some clear language about having an exemption for material that one could determine to be obscene material. And I think that would be difficult to maintain, that any librarian is intentionally disseminating obscene material to minors. But I do think the language brought to my attention after my yes vote on the bill regarding that which is harmful to a minor, I got to thinking, God forbid I ever become a vegan. I like my steak and potatoes, but if I was a vegan and I was teaching my child, oh, meat is horrible, and there's a book on barbecuing in the library, I could make the argument that's harmful to a minor. Now, that's on my personal parental standard. The point is, there still takes a prosecuting attorney at the county level in order to bring charges. Librarians just don't go to jail because someone says, I don't like this book. But I think that had I understood better both aspects of the language in Senate Bill 17 regarding that which is obscene and regarding that which is harmful to minor, it's vague language, and I wouldn't want to see anyone prosecuted under a vague statute. So I would argue that if that bill doesn't move forward, maybe we'd be better served to look at the language of what is harmful to a minor for anyone. I mean, we're talking about you, myself, anyone being prosecuted under language that if it's vague for a librarian who knows literary and materials a lot better than I do, then maybe I have confusion too if I'm wanting to share something with other people. So no, I think that bill would need further work before it should move forward. My understanding is that there's not a lot of appetite for it right now. I think the same language, though, started in 1134, if I'm not mistaken. That's been removed as well. So I think it was an education to me and others that that bill wasn't ready for prime time. And like I said, I've apologized to some school teachers, librarians, and public librarians already for not being more attuned to what that bill said in its totality. I was only listening to part of the conversation. So no, I don't support it moving forward in its current form.
Thank you, Senator Walker. Representative Lauer, what would be solved through this type of legislation that can't already be solved by the measures we have in place in our community? What are the local issues that would cause you to support this legislation?
Thank you. And I appreciate Senator Walker's suggestion that we put the brakes on it over in the House. I've talked to a number of colleagues of mine in the House, and I'm thinking that that bill may need to stay on hold. I'm not sure we'll hear that bill. In terms of the impetus of that subject matter, there certainly is some concern from parents in other parts of the states and their libraries that have been in the news, and I'm confident, very confident, in our officials and our librarians and the staff and our administrations in our schools, that there is a robust process for putting together the materials that come into the library, and also a complaint process that any citizen can go in and make a complaint about a specific material or whatnot. I had a great conversation with our local librarian, Mr. Hatton, and appreciated that very much, and really dug into the details of how that process works and what goes on. I think there is a very clear difference between school libraries, especially K through 12 libraries, and public libraries in general. And I think the the language of the bills don't change the standards of what's harmful to minors. I think everybody can understand there's a line there. Obscene, pornographic, sexually explicit materials you can't hand to 5-year-olds and with a specific intent and an evil intent. And that is illegal. And so I think from one perspective, that same action inside a library from a staff member of the library, would that circumstance be illegal? Well, reviewing those 17 and SB 17 and the language in there, I think our current statutes would take care of that situation. And I don't have any concern, especially just after sitting down with our librarians, talking to teachers, that we have those types of materials in our libraries. And there is a robust process to review those. So at this moment, I don't see that bill moving forward. And it's okay to have those discussions. I know that a lot of the concern of people that raised the red flag on this bill was overzealous prosecutors trying to go after librarians. And I'll say what I've said to a lot of people in this discussion is librarians have a long history of being very libertarian on First Amendment issues, and I do appreciate that very much. So I don't think that bill's going anywhere.
Thank you, Representative Lauer. House Bill 1107 is our next stop. It passed the House with a vote of 57 to 33 and now moves to the Senate. As it currently is written, the bill places the burden of proof to schools in most special education due process hearings. In BCSC, the district has experienced a substantial increase in the number of due process filings over the past 2 years. More often than not, the special education teacher, department, and administration aren't aware of concern until the legal filing is submitted. Schools don't have unlimited resources to defend themselves legally. Those expenses ultimately harm teachers and students. Liability insurance underwriters will most likely increase premiums for all school corporations across the state. And if this bill passes as written, schools will be guilty until proven innocent, which is contrary to most other legal proceedings. We believe that at a minimum, parents should be required to participate in a local problem-solving and/or mediation session before filing a due process lawsuit. Representative Lauer, thank you for voting against this bill in the House. Can you explain and share why you did so?
Well, thank you for the question. House Bill 1107, as all bills, dealt with multiple issues. On that particular bill, I did vote against it, even though it ended up passing the House 57-33, I believe. The main reason for my decision on voting against that bill did focus in on, I would say, are very real, but legal circumstances where you go into a courtroom, you have a complaint, you're a plaintiff, you're suing really any party, and our legal system has the burden of proof on the person coming in making the complaint or seeking remedy on an issue. And in this case, it seemed very clear to me that this was upending our jurisprudence of having the burden of proving circumstances on the plaintiff coming in. And it seemed in this bill, at least in the language that did pass the House, that reversed that, where you'd have an allegation or complaint seeking a remedy, and the school would have the burden to prove that they didn't do something. I think, when you get into courtrooms and you get lawyers involved, there's a long history of a process that's fair and impartial, and that's I think very important to our system. And this seemed to reverse that. I didn't like that. I don't think that's a trend we want to further, and I'm curious to hear how the Senate's going to handle that.
Great, thank you. Senator Walker, can you share your feelings on the bill as it's currently written?
Well, I think it's been well explained, Brett, and I agree with everything I've heard. Dr. Van Horn was kind enough to spend some time with me on the bill. And I will say I do think there was good intentions. We have a strong advocate for children and those with disabilities in the Senate that signed on as a co-sponsor until they heard the bill on education and they removed their name from the bill. I guess that kind of tells you that they agreed with the thought of doing everything they can for kids that are may have disabilities or learning challenges in a classroom, but everything's been said correctly about my understanding of the burden of proof, and I don't support the bill as it's drafted.
Thank you, Senator Walker. We're going to switch to another bill. SB 356 would allow a school corporation to hire adjunct teachers without any teaching qualifications or experience, pay them more than their peers, and prevent them from joining the local union. Proponents say this bill will help address the teacher shortage. At the same time, legislation such as HB 1134 resulted in a number of reports that educators would leave their career if it were to pass. It is our position that lowering the standards for becoming a teacher is not a solution that is in the best interest of students. Senator Walker, you voted in favor of this bill. Do you think we should lower standards for teaching, or should we work to make teaching a more attractive career?
Well, we should certainly work to make teaching a more attractive career. I don't characterize this as lowering the standards. So we're going back to the earlier conversation about the unintended consequences. It's also my understanding that there's a constant struggle to find qualified people that can work in all the positions that we have available. We already do make allowances for some of the special education and other hard to fill positions for those who teachers a teaching credentialed position was not their first career path. As I reflect back on my own education and those adjunct teachers that were still working in their profession and teaching, I found to be as effective as those that didn't take that particular track. I will say this too, that it's still up to the local system to make that decision to hire an adjunct under this program, or under this bill, I should say. And I think that the locals are equipped to make that decision. I don't know that I can say from my ivory tower that this will result in a lowering of educational excellence in the classroom. So I'm willing to give it a chance. I think I also understand from my own experience in education that certification is not the full spectrum of what makes a good teacher. And I've always believed that principals and other teachers and administrators can usually do a pretty good job of determining who's successful in the classroom and who's not. It's unfortunate that many would take a more traditional career path and get to the classroom in that early practicum, find out that, hey, I'm not cut out for this. And anyone that's willing to give it a shot and admit I'm not cut out for this, I want a vehicle for them to be able to be out of the classroom if that's not a good fit for everyone involved. But this is a local control issue as far as I'm concerned, and that's why I supported the measure. Now, I can't speak for local systems because I have not heard this to be true, but I am aware that in other parts of Indiana, there's a concern that there is practically a full-time staff of teachers who are just substitute teaching for with a high school graduate certification, high school degree, and because of the need in some areas, they've just are filling a spot that should be filled by someone with more credentials in that field. And I would hope that we'd be able to address that in some rare cases where that's the issue. But I just saw it as a local control. If you don't want to hire an adjunct instructor, then don't hire an adjunct instructor.
Thank you, Senator Walker. Representative Lauer, do you support this bill knowing that it lowers the standard for being a teacher in our schools in Bartholomew County?
Well, I don't see it as lowering the standards. The bill and I think Senator Walker made a lot of good points on the idea. And in our higher education, we have adjunct professors all over the place, and in our community, we have quite a bit of professionals with expertise in engineering, math, science, STEM fields, that if they so choose, our school board and our schools could tap into those experts in our community, and it gives more options to our schools. There are struggles around the state with teacher shortages, especially in those STEM fields. And this, in my opinion, is giving schools more flexibility to fill those gaps, to be able to take advantage of members in the community who, maybe they just retired after a long career in a professional life and want to give back to our community. I don't think there's anything there that says they have to be paid more. But I would say that I am very comfortable with the idea. It has local control, so if a school is in need and has someone with a teacher's heart to come in, I think that can benefit everyone as a positive and a win-win for the community and for the students. That's what it's about. It's about the kids. So bring in the concept of adjunct teaching from our higher education to our local communities, I think is a positive thing. And again, it's going to be up to the local school board and decision makers in our schools to make that choice. They can or they can't. But if you have people in the community that want to help, and there's now through these bills or through this bill an opportunity to do that, and I think that's a positive thing.
Thank you both. One final question from us. We believe that our local schools have trained, knowledgeable educators who are more than willing to work with you on productive legislation that benefits our kids and our community. In what ways do each of you envision working with local educators on future legislative sessions and legislation that impacts our schools? Representative Lauer, we can start with you.
Oh, that's a great question. For those of you that know me, I'm very passionate about our schools. My parents were educators. It's the most important thing we can do is give a solid foundation for our children, because they're going to be the future. They're going to be the ones that take over, right? And I always appreciate the conversations I have with teachers. And for those that you know me, I'm very open. I'll sit down and meet with anyone. And I have sat down and met with our teachers during this session and all previous sessions, doing the town halls like this. And also, I hope have reached out and had good conversations and relationships with our school board members and our superintendent and principals, and I think there's a lot of common ground that's all over the place. We focus a lot on the debate and the differences, and that's fine. There's no problem with that, and that's good. It's good to air our understanding of how we would like to see things, and the important thing to me is to find areas where we agree, and we agree on so much, especially on making sure that our kids get the best quality education. And I'm so very proud of our teachers. Thank you for what you do every day, and that is not lost on me on how difficult that can be, especially the last couple of years in this pandemic environment. But know that I'm always open and really enjoy sitting down with teachers and sitting down with educators and people involved in our community, looking to promote a positive quality and rich and fulfilling education for our kids. There's nothing more important, and we can find so much in agreement to move things forward and do positive things together. So my door is always open, and I really enjoy every conversation I have on this topic. I'm very passionate about it.
Great, thank you. It's very promising. Senator Walker, same question for you.
Yeah, thank you. There's something that's being done at BCSC that has really caught my attention. And Superintendent Roberts has been good to share with me the idea of, well, I've got a food vendor bill where we're trying to promote locally grown food and allow local sellers to go direct to the consumer. And so Dr. Roberts and others are working on sort of a local grown teacher pool and focusing on those that are in the classroom as support staff and aides, and those that are around the children now, getting acclimated, maturing with their relationship with the children, with other educators, and finding ways to encourage them in their own education so that they can pursue a pathway of credentialed teacher as their own children may mature and maybe even leave the house. They may see a career path opportunity there. And I'll tell you, one of my greatest concerns for the state is how are we going to grow the state of Indiana? We are being restricted already to where we either have to turn to technology to solve our problems, or we got to find some way to encourage hundreds of thousands of persons to come and live and work in Indiana that don't do so already. And so that applies to teaching staff, that applies to all kind of positions. But I'm really encouraged by the idea of focusing on those that are already in the building, already working with students, and encouraging them to find a career path. And I've spoken to a couple other legislators about what's going on with that pilot. I guess it's a pilot, you could call it. At least there's a first cohort class where they're kind of moving forward with those opportunities. And I've had some real positive reaction from the legislators. So it was about 2 weeks ago. I haven't said anything about it yet, as I decided I need to find out what the state can do to help promote that implementation in other systems. And so I intend to, once we get over the hump here of the legislative process, is learn more about that, what kind of obstacles might be in the way, what kind of funding opportunities might be available, and see if we can encourage that local grown educator model across the state. Business always tells you the customer you have is a lot more valuable than the customer you try to get. And sometimes we're always shopping for that new customer and we forget our current customers. Well, those aids and support offer kind of a built-in base of, they already show, the desire to be in the classroom, and we ought to take advantage of that interest and build on it. So that's one thing I hope to work on in the coming year.
Great, thank you. And before we wrap up, I just personally want to tell both of you, thank you for making the time on a Saturday morning. And this is not something that's required of you. It's, you choose to do so. And we appreciate it, and also appreciate CEA's leadership and the organization and ISTA as well, and, and making this available for us. As we wrap up, just want to give you a couple minutes to offer any closing comments. Senator Walker, you want to start?
Well, Brad, I'm just very grateful for the chance to address. And, I actually got a letter from a local official. He didn't ask for anything in the letter. The letter didn't specify any special request, but it was kind of like, well, you haven't reached out to me on some of the bills moving through the session, and I'm disappointed in you. Well, I'm sorry you're disappointed, but, Representative Lauer represents 68,000 people in the district. My number's double that. I don't talk to everyone on every bill. Believe me, I don't. And so please raise your hand. This is like the classroom. I've got a bunch of teachers. Put your hand up. And I've done my best, and I may have overlooked an email or something, and I don't intend to do that. But I try to engage with people and hear their perspective. And I love it when a educator calls me on a voting or election bill. I love when an educator calls me on a food vendor bill too. You're not limited to one topic. And in my perspective, it always makes you more of a well-rounded citizen and more of a knowledgeable person, but also more of a resource to me when it's not always just a one topic conversation. And I'm not saying you have to talk about election bills, but I can appreciate that, just like everyone, we've got varied interest in, I want to remain accessible, but this has been a good session this morning. Everything's hopefully to encourage more communication as we move forward. Thank you all.
Great, thanks. Representative Lauer, closing thoughts?
Thank you. And the topic of education, we could easily talk for hours and hours. And I always enjoy the conversations I have with constituents and with community leaders and with my colleagues up at the State House. So we don't always agree on everything, but that's okay, because the more dialogue and conversation, the better. There are a number of bills that we didn't touch on today that I think are very positive in advancing education in Indiana, from career and increasing or broadening career and technical education, more opportunities for youth apprenticeship programs, encouraging students in high school to get skills and trades that can launch them into a very rewarding career. Bills on school transportation flexibility, which I've been involved in during this session, that I think is very important. I think very positive to give schools more options on safety and with their options to transport students. Very important. Other things too, like making sure that we have very clear help with ESSER funds and other state funds for education and for opportunities. A little bit on improving the relationship of the officers in schools. And I think that's important too on safety. So there's been a lot of things going on in education during this session that we didn't get to touch on today, and that's okay, because we'll continue to have these conversations, and we're not through session yet. Things will continue to change. The process is very very robust in our system of government and how things work, and how you as community members have a voice, whether at this type of forum or contacting us. I really appreciate that very much. And at the end of the day, I look forward to a successful school year. And there was an announcement that things seem to be going in the right direction with the pandemic, and those restrictions, like mask restrictions at schools, have started to be lifted, and were lifted at BCSC. And I think that's when I talk to kids about that, and I was sitting next to a high school student at East this morning, actually, at an event, Martin Luther King Jr. breakfast. And I asked her about that, and she just glowed. She said, I can't wait for that. So thank you to the teachers and educators, administrators that have navigated through these difficult times for schools. And thank you for all of you that were helpful in making sure that our schools were open. That wasn't the case in other parts of this country. And it's so important for kids to get a great education, to be in school. And thank you to all educators to getting us to this point. And I'm rooting for you to finish up the school year strong and for many years to come. So thank you very much this morning for having me. And Senator Walker, thank you as well for all that you do. And I appreciate and looking forward to working with you as we go through this session. So thank you again, and good afternoon.
Thank you again to both of our legislators. We appreciate them taking the time to talk to educators in our community. Thank you as well to all those joining us today. We appreciate that you are thinking carefully about public education. As the 2022 legislative session heads into its final weeks, we continue to encourage our lawmakers to support our students, educators, and strong public schools. If you have questions that we did not answer here today, or if you have further comments, please contact Representative Lauer's office, assistant, I believe, at 317-232-9657. You can contact Senator Walker's office through the Indiana Senate number, which is 317-232-9400. Thanks everybody for joining us today, and have a great day.
232-9984. That's my direct number to my legislative assistant. So
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Again, thank you everybody for coming today, and have a great afternoon.
Bye
thank
now.
you all. See you.